the word pivot, and when you and I spoke before, we thought about the word pivot, but I want to give a different word because I don't think it's pivoting. It's evolution for us. It's we evolve, and we evolve based on where we are as a company and our strengths, but also where the market is going.
I'm Matt Tate, founder of Decimal and fellow entrepreneur. Yes, I'm one of the crazy ones. I've chosen time and time again to hustle my way through that first million. Now, I'm scaling to the next 50. So I know firsthand what the messy middle is really like. And I know that entrepreneurs and leaders like us need a destination for empowerment, community, and encouragement. This is our place. This is After the First Million. All right, welcome to After the First Million. I am really excited today to talk to Sharon Rechter, president and co-founder of First Media and E&Y 2019 Entrepreneur of the Year. I'm not going to lie, I think you all are going to enjoy a really cool story about how Sharon has helped grow First Media from a single cable channel to a global media enterprise with over 200 employees. But to me, after hearing a lot of her story, the sense that I've got is it's not just one company, but it's a bunch of different ideas that have grown into really successful brands and companies throughout the last 20 years. And so with that, Sharon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel with all these kind words, all I can do now is disappoint. So let's see how this goes. Very excited to be here, Matt.
I like to set the bar high so that everything comes in below. But
first, as they say about me in our company, first I overpromise and then everybody else over-delivers. So we will try.
I love that. Well, one of the things I like to start with is, as you and I both know, having both been leaders as well as mentored and talked to hundreds and thousands of companies, that you have to be a little bit crazy to start and run your own business. When did you know that you were one of the crazy ones?
I think I was always one of the crazy ones. I joke that I credit really all of my success to dyslexia. I am dyslexic. I cannot spell a word. And from a very young age, I realized that I can't play by everybody else's rules. If I play by everybody else's rules, I will lose. So I have to find creative ways to make wins. I think those of us who think a little differently end up taking risks and thinking, okay, we can't do things like everybody else. Let's find a way. That's been the story all of my life. I would say from third grade to starting my first coupon company to everything we do, to the way I parent. It's always been, let's not ask myself, why can I do something? Can I not? Let's go super crazy and try. What's the worst that can happen?
Well, I love that mentality. And I empathize with the growing up dyslexic. I have a brother who's ADHD and extremely dyslexic. And I've got a really close employee of mine, same thing. And I feel like we all grew up in an era when that was just becoming known or a thing. You must have really had to spend really your whole educational life fighting your way up.
For me, it was everybody else thought I was smart. I knew there were certain things I couldn't do, so I knew I was hiding, and I would just come up with creative solutions to problem. I'll give you an example. My parents made me go to a French-speaking school. If you cannot spell a word, French is the hardest possible language you could have, right, to study, because nothing is spelled the way it sounds. So until 11th grade, I was kind of going on with my D, and then I said, well, I'm not graduating with a D. I got to figure this one out. I've got to come up with a creative solution. How do I get an A in French? So I came up with this creative solution that I will learn 10 essays by heart. And regardless what I'm asked, both in the oral exam and the written exam, it really doesn't matter what I'm asked. I will answer one of my 10 perfect essays. And I come into the test, and the kids before me tell me that the teacher brings out a book of Chagall and asks to describe a photo. I cannot describe a Chagall picture. I do not know colors. I do not know shapes. I only know my 10 essays. I walk in and I yawn in the examiner's face. And he asks me, why are you tired? And I give them this perfect essay of my weekend trip with my family. And I get an A. And before they have a chance to ask any questions, I segue to the fact that I went on that trip with my best friend because I have an essay on my best friend. And I've been doing that for years as a child without kind of understanding what it was. And when I launched the cable and I paid somebody $20,000 to give me media training, they taught me a technique called bridging, which means it doesn't matter what question they ask you in a media interview, just answer the five things you want to answer. And I said, okay, well, I've been doing that since I was 17.
I think successful entrepreneurs and business leaders have a tendency to reframe the game.
Yep.
The way I talk about it with people that I mentor is if you're playing a game of chess and you're losing, the best thing you can do is flip the board over. And I think that there's a lot to that, just reframe the game how you want it to be. And if you can, it's a great thing. And I think that's also a good parenting style as well.
I agree. I agree. And reframing the game is exactly that. If somebody asked you, what does it take in the United States 15 years ago to launch a cable network? The answer would be $70 million and a lot of relationships, a lot of leverage. Well, when Guy and I started Baby First, we didn't have neither of those. So, what we said is, how do we come up with a way to launch a cable network in a way that's very different than everybody else? We were able to raise $500,000. How do you pitch a network? How do you get somebody to sign up? And we changed the model. We changed the model of how do you create content. Instead of creating hundreds of hours of programming in advance, or in a way TV shows are usually made episode by episode, we said, let's create a TV network that is based on repetition. And let's spend all our money in developing the ideas of the show, but not a single dollar in producing the show. And only once we get the cable companies to agree to launch a cable network, then everybody will want to give us money, and then we can immediately develop a cable network. And we launched a cable network in 3 months. When people in the cable industry, when I pitched them the idea, they said either we'll never give you money, or you are great kids, but you have nothing and I don't put my name on nothing, or I will tell you when you launch, well, hell freezes over. But we came up with ideas that were different and a different way to play the game for a chance to win.
You, 20 years ago, you and Guy decided to start a cable network. Why?
I will attribute it mostly to being vain and not understanding how hard it would be. I used to head a small ethnic network on Dish Network at the time. It had 20,000 followers, and I thought I was 27. I thought I knew everything. So if I can run a network and the owners of the network wouldn't give me a raise that would cover even my rent, why shouldn't I start my own network? Guy just moved to the United States and found out that every job interview that he goes to ends really with the question, and he used to be head of a military court and he used to be head of strategic planning, but every job interview really ends with the question, do you have a working visa? And it was what we called very much the humbling experience. And then we came up with this idea and said, let's do it. Let's try. How worse can we be? Let's try and launch it. If I can run a network and he understands the market, let's try. What's the worst that can happen? And what's the worst that can happen is actually a game I really enjoy playing. If we fail, what would happen? Why would we not? If we fail, two things will happen. People who thought we were super smart would say, well, Sharon's not as smart as we thought she was. And they'll make fun of me for about an hour until they'll move on to someone else. And the second thing is maybe I'll lose 2 years of my life and all the money I put in, and I'll go move back with my parents for a couple of years. Well, I kind of like my parents, so that's not too bad either. So why not give it a try? That's how we looked at things, and that's why we ended up having the courage to launch a network. Now, was it easy? No. Did we have to hustle a ton? Yes. Were there moments where we almost broke down? Yes. But we made it happen. After 2 years, we were able to get our first cable deal launched. And in the cable world, I like to joke that everybody wants to be the first second. So once you get your first deal, everybody else wants to launch you. And it was fun. But you and I spoke about it, that getting to launch a cable network was great. We did something that I think we're the only independent meaning not owned by a Viacom or a Fox, that got to 50 million homes in the last decades. And there are scars and war stories on how we did it. But in our story, in our world, it was known that when you get to 50 million homes, Disney calls, Bob Iger calls, they buy you, and you move to the sunset. You're good. Like, you did it. Like, right? You did it. And Bob Iger didn't call. He went on TV and said owning a cable network sucks. And Disney stock dropped 40%, Viacom stock dropped 40%, and we owned a cable network.
What year was that?
That was 2014.
Okay.
2014. And I remember it because it's the year my boys were born. So I'm going to have 4 kids and life is going to be like super comfortable right now and all of that. And suddenly it was really not so comfortable. Even when you think you've launched and you think you've succeeded, life throws curveballs at you. And that's when it becomes exciting.
So Bob Iger goes on TV and says owning a cable network sucks. How did you feel? I mean, you have this expectation, and that basically took it.
For me, every time there is turbulence of that kind, I find it exciting. So obviously, when Disney stock dropped 40% and Viacom stock dropped 40%, and suddenly cable was not cool anymore, Guy and I sat down and asked ourselves, what do we really own? And realized that what we owned was trust. Baby First was in 60 million homes. It was watched by 50% of US moms with the baby under the age of 3 for an average of 90 minutes a day. According to Nielsen, by the way, if you ask consumer, they'll tell you they only watch 30 minutes a day, but Nielsen doesn't lie. And we asked ourselves, so what do we own in addition to the cable distribution, which until then we thought that was our asset because there were well-known multiples on cable homes. So we said, okay, trust. We own trust. These women who are watching Baby First trust us. And when we dug deeper on what does that trust mean, they said, you are not my doctor, but you are my friend who had kids 2 years before me and is simply relaxed. We said, okay, well, there's this new content idea of creating videos on social. Why don't we start creating content for these women, first as moms, but then as women on social media? And we started with the Baby First audience. There were 47,000 followers of Baby First. What we did was we looked at what was working on social media. We literally worked, no AI, just Excels, analyzed what was working on content on social media, and started mastering the art and science of what makes content go viral. We also took a little bit of personal insight. I'm a mother of 4. So, with understanding the technicality of what makes a video go viral, and with the insight that potentially maybe there are other mothers like me, we started creating content on social media. Today, we have 4 brands. So, Blossom, So Yummy, Blusher, and Baby First, 250 million followers. We are number 1 in the world in views per post, number 1 in the world in share rate, number 1 in the world in engagement. And we never paid for a user. We never raised any money to do it. We solely mastered the art and science of what makes content shareable. And I know that this kind of sounds like super cool and like Bob Iger didn't call, but probably someone else called, but it's kind of not how life works, right?
I want to go back to the pivot, the change from cable to video, because you had a very good, sustainable company. You and Guy sat down and really tried to get an understanding, and did get an understanding ultimately of what your greatest assets were. In that time, though, did you find that you had the exact team for it? Or what did that mean going down, taking out and breaking away from the just, hey, it worked, it was great? It had to have been a little bit messy getting from point A to point B.
Oh, it's very messy and it hurts. So you said you defined your greatest asset and you're probably referring to trust, but I don't think that's our greatest asset. Our greatest asset is that we're good at adjusting to change and that we see really fast that the world is changing on us and that sometimes we have to cut a leg to save the body. So that required painful changes. It required changing ourselves. It required getting ourselves out of our comfort zone and going back to the drawing board. It required, unfortunately, separating from team members that were not the right members for the new world. And it required a lot of painful changes and acceptance also of what we will never be. We were not cable people when we started cable. So we found ways around it to get into the cable world. And we were not social media people when we went into social media. And we surrounded ourselves with smart people and accepted that there's a lot that we don't know. And there was a lot of humbleness in trying to do it and getting yourself off the floor and mourning what you thought you had and you no longer have. And mourning is okay too. And then you lift it up and you go back and 2 grenades and a stick light between your teeth and you go and fight yet again.
There's something that I don't feel like gets talked about a lot in successful people like yourself. And you mentioned humility, the willingness to accept your own limitations, giving space to mourn. Do you feel like humility is something that you've learned over time?
You're hammered on your head enough times, you'll learn to be humble. The amount of times that you are, at the beginning mostly, that you are sure that you know how to do something and you're super condescending to other people just to be in the same spot exactly and behave in the exact same way or worse, teaches you humbleness. Plus, if you're a parent, then you know humbleness because everybody thinks they'll never have the kid with the runny nose, right? Nobody thinks they're going to have a kid with a runny nose or other things that life's hit us with. And our kids teach us humility, to a great point. So yes, but I really think that mourning acceptance, but then an ability to brush it off. So you can't go into self-pity. Those of us who try a lot of different things and who try to break frontiers, 9 out of 10 it's a no, right? So, but on the big things that you worked really hard on and you failed, and you either failed because it was your fault or you failed because the world changed on you, whatever that may be, or change, whatever happened. So I give myself 24 hours to really mourn. I don't try to solve it. I get into my bed, I watch a movie, I make no decision, and I go deep, deep, deep into feeling sorry for myself for 24 hours. And then when the sun rises, I say, okay, this is what I thought I had. Unfortunately, I don't. This is where we are now. This is our new starting point. Brush it off and get up. And that has been very useful for me. And I have to say, I've generally been able to keep it to 24 hours. And we've had some big losses.
How do you not fall back? How do you actually draw the line at 24 hours and not go back and continue to mourn? Because I think at some point you just have to go forward. But how do you kind of flip that to, I'm done mourning, but I'm still okay learning from?
Well, there's a difference. Well, I think that we can use different words, right? There is feeling sorry for yourself. That's not very useful. Then there is mourning, which means I'm really sad about what happened to me. I'm accepting the pain within it. And then after that, if you're accepting the pain, you are really accepting that it's part of the game that you chose to play. And I look at it really, I remind myself that I enjoyed the highs so much that the other side of the high is the low. And it's the price of the game I wanted to play. And I could have lived a completely different life, but this is the game I chose to play. And without the lows, I wouldn't have the highs. And I brush it off. And I start thinking, okay, this is what we have. What we had until yesterday is gone. And it happened to you when you lose a big deal and you lose a big partner. And it also happens in life when really bad things happen into your family or things like that. And I say, but this is the new situation. Now, what can I do from here? And that's it. And it doesn't mean you don't sometimes go back in your head and you're a little sad about it, but you're done. You're moving forward. Don't know if I can give exact tools and mechanisms to do it. I'm always shocked. I had a dream to get into Columbia Business School. And I put all my work into getting into Columbia Business School. And guess what? I didn't have the grades. I didn't get in. And I don't remember how, but I went into my room for 3 days. And I don't remember eating. I don't remember drinking. I don't remember peeing. All I remember was when I left the room, I was honestly shocked, blown away that the sun was still shining. The world did not collapse. And everybody loved me just the same. The only thing that changed was I did not get into Columbia Business School. And I was never afraid to do anything since. Because even if I fail, and I tell this to my kids all the time, I'm not a failure, I just failed.
And every successful or non successful thing that any of us does is a combination of big or little things that succeed and fail. Everything is just a step. And I do feel like one of the things that failure for me has done, and having those truly, like I've had a company that's failed. I've had one that's been successful, one that's failed, and now one that's growing to hopefully success. But that failure also has given me the ability to appreciate and enjoy each step more. Because I do think that sometimes as we succeed, we keep thinking about the next step rather than appreciating each one that we're on as well, the failures and the successes.
And failure is the mother of creativity,
Oh,
right?
100%.
If you didn't fail, you wouldn't like have to do things in a different way. If Bob Iger didn't go on TV and said owning a cable network sucks, I would have owned a nice small TV network. It would be nothing compared to the impact we have today when we reach 71% of US women every single month. So I also remind myself that my failure is just not the end of the story. It's just a chapter. And come on, let's bring it up and see what's next. And sometimes I believe in the man upstairs. So sometimes I look at him and I go, really? Is that the best you can do? Come on,
Bring
bring
it
it
on.
on. Bring it on. Exactly. Bring it on. And sometimes I also say, come on, enough with the lessons. I've learned enough.
It does get tiring.
But I find that the lessons, I can't feel them at that time. But since I've had so much practice in failing, now I already know that that horrific feeling that you have when you fail, the horrific burn inside, it goes away. It's killing you at the moment, but it does go away like the first time you're dumped, right? When you're young. So it goes away. If you could just hold on to the wave, you'll be just fine. It's never the end of the story.
I've always loved that. And one of my favorite historical figures is Teddy Roosevelt, but he's got a great quote about the man in the arena. And at the end of the quote, he says about the man in the arena, if he fails while daring greatly. And that's just something that I've always thought as I go to sleep every night. At least I'm trying.
You know what? I think that's so true. To us, living without trying doesn't feel like living. I will tell you, I had a grandfather who had a chemical a chemical store, and if somebody came in to buy something and didn't say please, he would say I don't have it. And every day he closed his store at 5 o'clock, and he went to play tennis, and he skied until he was 90. And I don't know if I'm happier than he was. He might have been happier than me. I don't know. But for me, to try and go where no man has gone before, to come up with an hallucinative idea and see if I can make it happen, that's my adrenaline rush. And it's a matter, I guess, of who you are. And there's no one way to live.
No, I think every one of us is different. And I think so much we learn from success as well as failure. I want to go back to you. You mentioned something about the kind of second, I'd say, oh shit moment that you had. And that is, and it's also the second exterior thing. It's not a self inflicted wound. When Facebook changed their algorithm, like you had successful cable network, Bob Iger, you have successful impressions on Facebook and ads, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. You have a lot of these really big name people that do their companies do things that end up changing the trajectory of your business. What did you do in 2016?
I want to start by saying that when Facebook changed their algorithm, that was not 2016. 2018 is when I think, 16 or 18, I think they changed their algorithm. So I want to start by saying that I like to think of changes in the world, and AI is another change right now. I like to think of it as whirlpools. And I once took a lifeguard class. And the first thing they teach you at whirlpools is that you can't fight them. You cannot fight it. And I think of it as change. It comes, it drags you down, and you can't fight it. And the only way to win is if you allow yourself to go with it and then swim out from the side. And I think of it that whenever change comes to us by storm, the first thing I look at doing is actually surrender. Accept that the change is happening, and now and let ride with it, and then find your way. So when Facebook changed the algorithm, the algorithms are never changed without logic. There is logic. So it took us a few days to understand that what Facebook was looking for was meaningful engagements. So everybody was losing, all the big content creators were losing all their views because we didn't know what is the definition of a meaningful engagement. Well, by a lot of testing and trial and error and trial and error and trial and error, we figure out really fast, what does meaningful engagement mean? And to Facebook, it meant a comment with 3 words. So now we were first in the market to adjust our content to drive you to comment a comment that was at least 3 words. And when many of our friends were going out of business, because we were so good at accepting, we weren't sitting for days mourning the fact that we lost hundreds of millions of views, but rather we sat there and said, what does it mean? Why are they doing it? How are they doing it? And we adjusted to it. But I think that when we look at ways to grow, it's not just the inflicted change, it's also sometimes really interesting opportunities that come your way. So I had two situations happening at the same time. One, views were decreasing. So that's part of that, and we were adjusting based on that. But on the other hand, to push my Alzheimer's away, I invest in early stage startups. It helps because you learn everything, you learn something new, and young people, and you get excited, and you get to fail 30 times a day, and it's beautiful. But I made a bet with one of my founders, and I lost the bet. The agreed upon thing was that if I lose the bet, it was a medical app, and to remind you, my brands are about food and beauty and do it yourself. If I lose the bet, I'm supposed to do a video for him. And I called him up and I said, Alan, I don't want to do that video. And he asked me if I was a person of my word, and I kind of try to be a person of my word. So he said, so do the video. And we did the video, and it was for a medical app, and it was asking telling the viewers that checking your symptoms on Google when you have a headache is as dumb as throwing darts, because you either have a brain tumor or a migraine. And that video generated 1 million views, which in our world means the worst performing video in the history of First Media. And I called him up and I was very smug about it. And I said, you see, worst performing video in the history of First Media. And he said, shut up and look at the data. And when we looked at the data, we found out that we were delivering the best customers he's ever had. We put $2,000 behind it, still doing it. $20,000, still working. $200,000, still were able to deliver it. To cut a long story short, that company grew from a 40 million valuation to 1.2 billion. I won't say it's all us, but maybe we had some contribution. But what was interesting is that when the viewership was falling from Facebook, another opportunity came by. Now, I could have taken that video and said, well, that was a one-off. We said, wait, there's an opportunity. We can create content that drives people to make a transaction. And with that one bet that I lost, we started a business that today generates between $500,000 to $1 million a day in driving content that sells direct-to-consumer brands to a consumer on social media. So I think sometimes the growth comes from forced change. And sometimes it comes from really small opportunities that you need to listen to and take a chance on. Again, it's adjusting to change, because when one thing was falling, and if you look at the landscape of publishers today, I don't need to give you the names, but you know the landscape of leading publishers in our industry, well, their valuations have been dropping. I can't talk about everybody else, but we have been able to keep growing and stay a profitable company at big scale by constantly accepting the change and following the money. I think that's another point worth talking about. It's following the money. And that goes to humility, maybe. It's really easy to do big and trendy things that give you very high top lines. I like to go calculated crazy. Go crazy, but only if you really believe that if you are successful, there is a great gold bucket at the end of the rainbow. Crazy for the sake of crazy is I think less exciting.
Give me another example about calculated crazy and kind of following the money. And really what you're saying is follow the profit, because it's not just top line revenue.
Not just the
It's
profit, also the scale. It
true.
really goes into, don't fall in love with the fact that you came up with an idea and it's super fun and it's super cool and you really love it, so let's go do it. You fall in love with an idea, that's great. You have an idea, that's great. But then actually run the numbers and do the work and do the analysis of, let's just say I am successful. Is there scale? Is there profitability? If I am successful, many really cool ideas, if you really ran the numbers in advance, you would have figured out that you couldn't make a business out of them, because the margins weren't there at scale, because the market wasn't big enough anyway. And you just did it because somebody on your team thought it was a great idea. I can tell you, in digital media, for example, there was a period of time where everybody wanted to make TV shows because the top line was beautiful. But we are by chance, but most digital players are not TV producers. So it might seem really cool to want to be a TV producer, but there was no money in it. And they raised a ton of money and they got really high valuations, And if you go and look, most of them are not with us today. So to me, it's about get excited about your idea, but then be diligent and do the work. Is the market really there? Is it scalable? Take risks, but know that if you were successful, it is going to be worth 10x.
To me, that topic pervades any type of business that you want to start.
Yep.
And you and I are in the business of trying to scale and believing in scale. So what we believe in is trying to do that, building from scale from day one, and really understanding the economics of scale as much as start. But there's also even the person that wants to start their own small business. And I think what you're really saying too is extremely powerful for them, which is truly understand the economics of the business and what you want it to be, and can you do that?
Yep. Is it even doable? Is it if everything worked in your favor? Can you even reach where you are trying to reach? And I think it's really important with small businesses because then people actually end up putting their own money. Let's say you open a store. Is the location that you picked for the store, does it even have a chance to drive the traffic you need to drive? If everything was in your favor, for that store to drive the revenue that you could actually be that it would be successful. And I think in many cases, the answer would be no before you even started. So, and then if you understand that it's no, it doesn't mean you don't have to do it, but it might mean you have to move the store. It might mean you need smaller square foot or bigger square foot, but at least be aware. I am very diligent on let's do the numbers work before we launch to see that it could succeed. And, I preach, obviously, I've made mistakes too. I've fallen in love with my own ideas. I can give you the most sad one was with not checking my facts was when we launched the channel Baby First. It was an add-on at the beginning, was a premium service on DirecTV and on Dish Network. So we said what we will do, because Dish Network and DirecTV call centers are so busy, they'll never have time to sell our network. We will open a huge call center in the Philippines, and we will have our own 800 number, and we will buy ads, and we will drive people to our 1-800 number, and we will convince people that it's the best channel on the face of the planet. And we spent $500,000 building that call center and training that call center, only to find out that DirecTV will not allow you to put a 1-800 number that sells a channel not through DirecTV's call center. So that could have been a lot of money saved by doing the legwork in advance, right? So this is okay. This is my most stupid and humiliating story, but there's so many like it. I will say I have enough scars, not I think. I have enough scars. And I don't want it to seem like doing the work makes you less exciting, less risk taker, less entrepreneurial. No, in my mind, the real entrepreneur comes up with the great ideas, understands the limitations, and then doesn't stop there. Finds a way to make it happen after, but does understand the limitations.
That's the key, is you have to have something behind the idea. And the small business, the tech community, the media community is full, the graveyard is full of people that had a good idea. But success is having the resilience, the brain power, the patience to truly also build a plan, execute on the plan, understand the opportunity, and then flow with the money.
Yes, and I think especially today, when the world is less tolerant to let's just acquire customers no matter at what cost. If there was a time, and there was a time where that was accepted, where most companies were told, oh, just bring an audience, just have market share, just grow, and they were losing money on every customer. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. So it's okay to say, I will grow for a certain period of time and I will lose money. That is completely valid as long as there is a plan at the end of the road to have a sustainable business.
And I think that's a great lesson. And I'm interested now, you guys have kind of pivoted, you followed the money in a million different ways. Where are you today?
So it's interesting because my world is changing too. So if you look at, and at the end of the day, what are we driven by? In addition to fun and the fact that I like to do things I've never done before, in addition to all that fun stuff, at the end of the day, we're a company with shareholders. And what we need to do is constantly think of how do we drive maximum valuation to our company. And again, the world is changing, and companies in my space used to be worth billions of dollars, even though they weren't profitable. So they were losing money and worth billions of dollars. Many of them are gone, and those who are still there are not worth billions of dollars. So now in the last year, we've been thinking, okay, we need to change not just what we do, because what we do is still profitable, but for the sake of the multiples and how we are perceived, we also need to change the story. We need to change our core. We need to change who we are. So, as I mentioned to you, First Media through So Yummy and Blossom and Blusher drives $500,000 to $1 million of sales of other people's products. We get people to see amazing content that we produce, that we put on our own brands, and drive them to sell. It was time to take the risk and do it on our own brand and prove that our brands are not just digital brands, but actually real brands that can drive people into stores and online seeking for them. So in the last year, we did two things that I've never done before, and I've learned a lot of words I didn't know in the retail world, which is super fun. We launched So Yummy line of appliances. So remember, I'm the girl from cable who doesn't know anything about cable. I'm the girl from social media who is really uncool and doesn't know anybody who's cool in the social media space. Well, now I'm a girl of appliances. So Yummy brand has now at Target air fryers and juicers and blender. And through the deal we did with also our partners at Made by Gather, which are amazing manufacturers, we got an entire end cap at Target for a year, which is the prime real estate that you can for our appliances. And the reason they gave it to us is because of our ability to drive content and sales. So we launched it in January. In the first 3 months of the year, Target said it was one of the most successful launches in the history of Target. We've driven 200 million views, 22 million engagements, north of 700,000 clicks of people to buy those products. We've also launched a physical magazine in stores, in 30,000 stores. So if you go to your Rite Aid, or is Rite Aid still around? I don't know. The CVS, the Walmart, the Target. If you go all of these places, you will see the So Yummy magazine. Why? It's a rounding error compared to what we are doing on our other frontiers. But it proves the value of our brand to actually mobilize hundreds of thousands of people and fans to engage with our product. So we moved from just being a social media brand to a brand that you can touch and you can feel and you can interact with while staying loyal to our brand values. What do I mean? So we're hacks brands, right? I mentioned to you that everything I do, I want people to go, oh my God, how does she do it, right? So give you more value for your money, save you time, but again, make me the hero in front of my friends and family. So the appliances we launched were supposed to do exactly that. So we're selling you an air fryer for $24.99, but our air fryer comes with only one button. Why? Because it comes with 100 recipes that you could do with one button, with the thesis that people will press your buttons all day long, your air fryer shouldn't. And we're leveraging the fact that we are perceived as innovators in content and finding the hacks to tell you the story, to give you a wonderful air fryer at $24.99. So this is a new frontier for us that is about, again changing. Now, you used the word pivot, and when you and I spoke before, we thought about the word pivot, but I want to give a different word because I don't think it's pivoting. It's evolution for us. We evolve, and we evolve based on where we are as a company and our strengths, but also where the market is going. So it's a really fun time. And now I know a lot of retail words that I've never known before. And I feel like I now need to write a movie and win an Oscar or something because I haven't done that yet.
I think that would be great. I love the evolution. There's an underlying theme there of when you evolve, you take the good and keep it,
Yep.
and you improve upon the bad.
Or you let it go. Letting
Right.
go is a really big part. It's you improve, in evolution, I have a child who is 17 and is an evolutionary biologist. So, she's way smarter than me. And when she explains to me evolution, by the way, when she explains evolution, she explains that the goal is to keep what's necessary. and let go of everything else. So to me, it's not about improving actually what's not working. It's about letting it go. And that's a hard part, to let it go, because sometimes you love it, but it's just not serving you anymore. So evolution is constantly evaluating. Did what worked for me yesterday, is it still working for me? If it's working for me, can I double down and grow it? Or what's the next step? For example, how do we incorporate AI? How do we improve? But also, how do you let go? And you need to forget that we're not alone on that journey, right? We have a team. So, to give an example, take AI. AI has given us the opportunity to create ads in a significantly more efficient way. So if before, if I wanted to shoot a scene where there's a doorway and a beautiful woman opens a doorway and there's a package and we need to bring it in and the dog is barking, right? I need to stage that whole thing. It would be expensive and it would take a few days to shoot. Well, now we could do that with AI. So how does your designer feel about that? Because there's a lot of shift. So the way we have tried to communicate it to our designers is you have to adjust your skill. You are no longer a designer working on designing an ad. You are head of a design team, and AI is your team. So what you need, the skill you need to change and to evolve to, is not to be the best at literally working with your mouse to improve the design. You need to teach yourself how to give the best prompt so that an AI will do it for you. And that's a new skill, but it will make you a master designer. And that's a change. But when our team accepted that change, that they now get to, instead of being a designer, run a design team, which AI is your team, their level of excitement and their productivity has gone up greatly, and we see more scale. So, but it's a change. And that's where evolution comes to every little one of us. You know, we it's not just you and me as companies, it's every one of us. When we see change, it's how can we take what's great about it and let go of what's painful? Because maybe you really enjoyed drawing that ad with your hand, but it's okay. Now do it for your arts and crafts project, but it's not serving you to grow and evolve.
You know, as you just said it right there, is a really good lesson of us as leaders. It's our job to help the company evolve. But in order to do that, all parts of the company have to evolve too. All people in the company have to evolve as well. And that can be the hard part about growing a business, is not just setting the path, but also helping every single person get onto that path, or make sure that you have the right people that are on that path.
And you show them how it serves them and how they can grow from it. And let's be honest, not everybody will do it. You do your best, but there are also painful let goes. And painful let goes are hard. In order, sometimes you cut off a leg to save the body. It's very sad, but it's part of evolution.
It is. Well, I really appreciate you talking today. I personally have learned a ton. But before we go, I'd love just, you've hit on so many different things. As you've kind of gone through the messy middle of building your company and evolving your company, what is one thing, one piece of advice that stands out to you?
One piece of advice. I will say this. I'm going to end it with a light, entertaining story, okay? I once had a very tough negotiation, and it was completely stuck, and it was all men in the room and me, and couldn't get it to move. And I left the room and I called my dad and I asked him, what do I do? And my dad said, if all else fails, use your feminine power. And I said, Dad, what the hell are you talking about? I am your daughter. And he said, hell no, I mean cry. If a woman starts crying in a room full of men, they won't know what to do. They'll back off. The negotiation will restart. And you know what? I didn't cry, but it changed something within me, that I have a power to cry in that room that everybody else in the room didn't think I had. And I think each and every one of us has powers. We have acquired or we have been given of birth. And these powers are not necessarily what people think they are, because nobody thinks being a woman in a room full of men is a power, right? But if we actually stop back and look at it and say, this is the cards I've been dealt with, how can I use my cards to my advantage? Let's really deep. What can I do with these cards that other people can't do? For example, I'm not invited to play golf with the guys, but maybe they ask me for marriage advice as a woman. I'm just saying that. But maybe there are other things, you know? Everybody has secret powers. And if you find yours, the unexpected ones, and you accept them, there is a really interesting win that nobody else can have. I don't know. That's mine.
No, that is perfect. And that is a great way to end. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. After the First Million is presented by Decimal. To listen to more episodes and find tips to help make running a business easier, visit decimal.com/AFM. Want to join the conversation? Reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's explore the messy middle.